today's topic. I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully, it is going to help everyone when it comes to hiring and everything. And obviously, this time of year, I think firms sort of go into panic mode when I suppose if like you're in Australia and stuff. Yeah, I've just had all of a sudden a lot of clients saying, "Hey, I actually need to hire someone like right now." And it's like, did you plan for this? Like, did you think about this a few months ago? And yeah, a lot of people just don't think about that sort of stuff. They just sort of they go off like reactive mode. Is that the term? They're more reactive than actually planning ahead. Hopefully, you get a bit out of this topic. I will say I've got like heaps of notes. So if it looks like I'm reading, like a script and stuff, it's because I am, because I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys as much information as possible. I guess let's get stuck into it. So I've sort of written that small firms tend to really feel bad hires way more than bigger firms. And that's purely because obviously when you're a smaller firm, generally there's no HR safety net. There's nothing like that, and often there's no budget as well. So, if you don't have a huge budget, you tend to, when it comes to the mistakes, often no budget to just eat the mistakes and try again. You can't just try again. You've sort of got to go with what you've done. So if you're a smaller firm, you do tend to feel it a bit more than, if you've got a larger firm. But I have written some like real world scenarios where hiring mistakes hit the hardest. The first one is the firms that say that we needed to hire someone yesterday, because they're that desperate. So a 12-person firm loses their only senior accountant and hires the first decent looking resume within 2 weeks. 6 months later, that person's disorganization has caused two missed client deadlines, and a scramble to redo their work, costing far more time than the rushed hire saved. So, who's sort of been in that situation where you've just like, you've seen a good resume and you've gone, okay, I need to hire that person because I'm that desperate? You could hire someone who looks great on paper, but then when they actually do the work, sometimes they don't have the initiative. Like you need an admin person who is going to take initiative, who's going to be able to just think on their feet and be like, okay, well, this isn't happening right now, but I can see that there's a gap here. So, I need to sort of fix that. So, yeah, that's a great example, Thomas, hiring
Mhm.
someone who knows what they're doing, who actually has yeah, I guess the initiative to do it. So the second one is well, this actually aligns perfectly. So the technical skills hire with a culture mismatch. So that's basically where they have the technical skills, but they don't actually have that good culture match. So, you come across, it could be like a senior production manager, for example. They can be like super smart with when it comes to tax and bookkeeping or whatever it is, but they could be a micromanager, or they could have, just a really toxic attitude. And if they're in that manager position and they're having to deal with other staff, it's going to affect everyone. It's not just affecting their sort of area. It's going to affect a whole range, like a whole, yeah, connection sort of thing. So, you want to make sure that when you are hiring someone, especially for a manager role, whether it's client manager, senior production manager, whatever it is, but even just, your normal production team, they've got to have the right attitude. They've got to have the right mindset as well. And they've got to be willing to work with the team, especially if they're working remotely. So working remotely, as we know, like it's harder to connect because you're not face to face with that person, like you're not sitting right next to them in the office. So, you don't want to just hire someone who is going to do their work and then just leave and then have no connection at all with their teammates. Because
Mm.
one, they probably won't last as long because they feel really isolated. But
Mm.
it also means that they may not feel comfortable to come to you if you've got an issue, or if they've got an issue, because they're not willing to build that connection with you because they're just sort of they're like, no, I can do this myself. Yeah, so if you hire someone who's sort of, I guess, got the right attitude, who's like, you know what, I've got an issue right now. I'm gonna reach out to my manager or my boss or whoever it is. It does make things easier. So the third one, this is the final point for this section, is the remote hire who needs direction. And this again sort of plays off what we just spoke about. So a small firm hires remotely, does a couple of video calls, checks references loosely, and the person turns out to need far more oversight than your management team can provide. I guess this is where the initiative comes into it as well. So if you're hiring someone, but they actually need to be in the office with someone directing them. They're not used to working from home, or they get, super distracted by things. They could have kids, which is fine. Like it's fine hiring someone who's got kids, who does work remotely, but they can't be working and looking after their kids at the same time. You want to be checking that they've actually got the child goes to childcare, or there's a nanny or someone, their partner to help them out so that they can concentrate on their work. I'll never forget, we hired someone, and then like 6 or 7 months later, we found out that she was actually homeschooling her children at the same time. We had no idea about the kids or anything during the interview process and then all the hiring process. And then, yeah, we found out later that, yeah, she was homeschooling her children while she was working. So it's
Well,
it's one of those things where sometimes you don't want to ask in the interview, do you have children? But I guess it's the way that you frame the question. For example, I would say, do you have a private space to work? And then that tends to give a bit of insight of, oh yeah, I work in my office because, I've got children or whatever it is. Or if they say I live alone, so I don't really need a private space, like just a bit of insight. I guess that's where in the interview process, making sure that it's not so much an interrogation, but a conversation with someone so they feel comfortable enough to say, yeah, I've got a family, I've got kids and everything, and then just getting a bit more information from them that way. Or you could just flat out say, do you have children? But if you don't feel
what do you think
comfortable.
about kids?
Yeah. So that's that sort of that section about, the real life scenarios that people do go through when it comes to bad hiring and everything. And I guess what we were saying earlier about like looking at the resume versus like actually testing their skills. And one of the points that I'm about to talk about sort of helps in this area. These are prevention strategies for firms to make sure that you don't have a mishire. So the first one is slow down the parts that are cheap to slow down. You can't always afford to wait for the perfect candidate, as we know, but you can afford one more, structured interview or one more reference call. The expensive mistake is usually made in the last 10% of the process, not the first 90%. So, testing. If you're testing every, single candidate, that's where it becomes really expensive. But the other side of things, like asking them technical questions in the interview process, for example, or talking to their past managers and just confirming that they've got the right skills or whatever it is, that is inexpensive to a point. I know everyone's super busy. And what's that saying? Time costs money, but that's still cheaper than having to buy, a $200 test for every candidate that comes through. So that's the first one there. The second one is use structured, consistent interviews, not just conversations. And I know earlier I said about, you want to make sure that the interview feels like a conversation, and that's 100% true. You never want to feel like you're interrogating someone because you won't get any of the information that you need from the person. Imagine, sitting down, like from a candidate's point of view, imagine sitting down in an interview and then having someone just bombard you with all these questions in like just feeling like you're interrogated. You're going to be really closed off, really standoffish, and you're just going to give them the bare minimum basically because you want to get out of that interview as soon as possible. Whereas if you sort of treat it like you're getting to know someone, which that's basically what it is, like you're meeting someone new, you still ask them the important questions, but you do it in a manner that makes them feel comfortable, like you genuinely want to know about them, they will feel more relaxed and they will tell you a lot more. That's the second one. The next one is tests for the actual job. So along with tests that you can find in the Wise Market, account tests, Test Gorilla, there's so many different ones. You can also do a paid trial, work sample, like that sort of stuff. A short paid trial period reveals far more than an interview. For a five-person team, one bad hire can be 20% of your headcount. A few $100s for a trial task is cheap insurance, basically. I know even for Wise, like if we're hiring someone in like marketing or graphic design or whatever it is, like Brenton will get them to do just a little trial job, and it could be a couple of weeks or something, just to sort of see what their work is like, and how they work with the team as well. Because we need to make sure that they're actually going to fit in with our culture, with how we work. And then, okay, so number four, do real reference checks, not formality checks. And what I mean by that is, ask the manager or their past manager specific questions about, what would you have wanted to see improved, like with the person. How do they handle a tight deadline? Those are the sort of questions that you want to ask. You don't want to just ask, your generic sort of questions about can we confirm their dates of them working and stuff. Like you still want to ask those questions, but you want to focus on the other stuff of like what was it like for them working for your firm and working in the team, and how do they handle those sorts of situations. And then the next one is define the roles non-negotiables before you start looking. And that's super important because small firms often hire reactively, like what we were saying earlier, and let the job description drift towards whoever's applying. I've seen that happen so many times with our clients. And then, so decide in advance what skills, trait, or behavior is truly non-negotiable, and don't compromise on it under time pressure. Like that's a big one because that's where you start. That's a classic example of a mishire. Because if you're compromising, if you're saying, yes, I want a senior production manager, and then you end up with an intermediate accountant because it's the best person that's come through in your pipeline, you're going to spend months and months and months training this person. There can be a bit of compromise. So like if you're looking for a senior accountant, for example, and then you end up with like a high-end intermediate accountant who only needs maybe 1 or 2 months of training, that's okay because in reality, everyone needs a little bit of training when they first start a new job. It could just be on the process of how you like to do things, or it could be a little bit of technical skills. Don't do like a huge jump because that's just going to waste everyone's time and money, and it's a headache for everyone basically. Okay, so the next one is build in a real trial slash probation period and actually use it. So many small firms have a 6 month probation period, and that's what we personally recommend. A lot of I've heard of some firms doing like a 3 month probation period. We say that's way too short because you don't really know in the first 3 months. 6 months is a better way to do it basically. Yeah, so don't just do like a 6 month probation period on paper, but never act on it because letting someone go feels disruptive. Set specific checking criteria at 30, 60, and 90 days and commit to acting on them. Yeah, so there's that one. And then the next one is separate the I like this person from the this person is the right fit for this role. Have a structured scorecard. And as you guys know, we love our scorecards here at Wise. Rating candidates on specific criteria rather than that gut feeling, and update this throughout the entire hiring process. So the last one, my last point, have a fast exit plan, not just a fast hire plan. So this one is part of what makes bad hires so costly for small firms is that they linger too long once a problem is apparent. Knowing in advance what, this isn't working looks like and being willing to act on it quickly limits the damage. And I think that we sort of touched on this earlier, but it's still really important to discuss because I mean, I guess we've all sort of been there where you've hired someone, you think that this is going well, but then you start noticing little things here and there, but you just don't act on it.